as we know, Russia's economy is in the crapper.
Mm-hmm.
Since they invaded Ukraine, the entire Western world has totally hit them with sanctions, locked them out of the international economy.
Mm-hmm.
They're now China's bitch. And now Russia's largest gas company, the gas giant Gasprom, this is Russia's state-owned energy giant,
Mm-hmm.
looks like they aren't going to be able to turn a profit for the next, 10 years.
Yeah. And that's what they're saying.
Yes. So in a study that was commissioned by the company itself,
Mm-hmm.
it found that Gazprom's export volume will not return to pre-war levels until 2035.
At best.
It will take a decade just for them to maybe get to where they were 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And so why is this?
Why is this? Well, let me give a little more background, okay? In May, the firm disclosed its first net loss ever of $6.9 billion in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time they've ever lost money.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's only going to get worse. Why is it going to get worse? They're having trouble adapting to the future, okay? A lot of the way that countries are consuming natural gas now is through liquefied natural gas. Gazprom does not have that capability right now. They are transferring all their gas through pipelines. And so what their thought process was, okay, we need to expand our pipelines. We need to build more pipelines. We need to integrate more things through the pipelines, okay? So they wanted to create the Serbia 2 pipeline to connect with China.
Yep.
But China recently said, no. China knows that they have Russia in their pocket, that Russia has no leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So China demanded that they get sold the gas at 25% of what it would normally receive on the open market. This is domestic level prices.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, they don't want to absorb as much gas as Russia wants them to absorb. They're not going to buy as much as Russia wants.
Yeah.
And so Gazprom's one of their biggest issues is that they don't have any more buyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They used to sell all their stuff to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
No more. Germany's not buying it. Europe's not buying it. They need someone else to buy the gas. But these countries that they would even sell the gas to buy their gas through a liquefied natural gas thing.
Sure.
They don't do it through pipeline.
Yeah. And also China being really the one customer that Russia would have to rely on wants to move away from natural gas and fossil fuel energy generation overall.
Exactly.
Right? Natural gas is already a very small percentage of the Chinese energy mix.
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes no sense for them to give Russia more leverage over them for when they're rapidly expanding their solar generation capacity, rapidly expanding battery energy storage capacity. There's no leverage that the Russians have.
There's no leverage that the Russians have with China or any other country.
The one other thing I want to put out here about Gazprom specifically, because you're focusing on the LNG portion,
mm-hmm.
there's another Russian state-owned company called Novatech that is more the LNG side of energy generation. And so Gazprom has always relied on pipelines either going west to Europe, or now they have the one going to China to deliver all their gas. And it's just so easy for countries that don't want to import it anymore to stop taking the gas from those pipelines.
Right.
And so it would not only take a ton of infrastructure investment to build new pipelines to places, but also they don't have markets big enough near them that are also friendly to them that are going to be willing to buy their gas.
And so what you just said there was they need to build more pipelines into new countries.
Yeah.
They can't even do that because to build these pipelines, you need turbines to move gas through the pipelines. And all of these turbines are made by Western companies.
Yep.
So developing turbines domestically, the study finds will take 5 years and $100 billion in rubles of investment. This is a massive undertaking. The country and the company are both struggling financially.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do $100 billion in ruble investment to just maybe make a profit at some point 10 years from now?
And especially when you're in the middle of a war and you don't know how far you're going to go into Europe, like the future is so uncertain. To make that big of an investment that could only pay off that long into the future is kind of crazy to think about.
So the only other thing this commissioned report says to Gazprom and tells them to do is switch to LNG. Do what you can to switch to liquefied natural gas. But that's also very complicated, and they don't have the technology to do that.
Yeah, liquefied natural gas technology is extremely advanced.
Yeah, it's new.
Yeah.
It's like a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something that they can just, whip up the book that the German technicians left around 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that.
No.
So I want to emphasize, I want to ask this question here. Does this show a flaw in the global liberalism order? Okay? Because what this shows me is Russia's entire economic interest was not with invading Ukraine. So much so that their largest gas giant, the big driver of their economy, was destroyed by this war.
Yeah.
And even that wasn't enough to deter Russia from going into war. Even total economic devastation of their largest nation-owned company wasn't enough to stop them from going to war.
Okay.
What could stop a country from going to war? Is there any economic incentive that can stop war if even this wasn't enough?
Well, okay, maybe this wasn't enough, but what if there's another side of the alternative that is Russia might have gone to war this much sooner if they didn't have the economic incentives to not go to war? What if they'd gone to war, if they invaded Ukraine 6 wars earlier because they had an economy that was generating all of their own income and consumption on their own, and they didn't need to make these exports of natural gas?
That's possible.
It's possible.
That's a better way. That's a more optimistic way to look at it.
Because I think about it through the China lens of Taiwan, of course, right? Because it's like I see it as China's trying to kick the can down the road of something that they have articulated will need to happen at some point, because the economic hit to them right now would still be too devastating, and they don't want to have to deal with it. But we've talked before and hypothesized that China will get to a point where it's either now or never.
Right.
And I think the demographic picture in Russia was making it now or never.
So you think that Russia's economic integration with the West was doing as much as it could to postpone the inevitable, but it was still inevitable?
I think it, at least, I mean, that's one perspective.
I think I don't know what it tells me. I think it tells me that integrating economies is not a good idea if it's not your ideological ally. That's what I think I learned from this. I think it's a bad idea to integrate your economy, whether it be with energy, consumption, whatever it is.
Yeah.
With a nation that is fundamentally against your ideological interest. It almost makes it makes me feel like there is nothing that we could have given Putin to have him not do this. There is no amount of economic integration that would have made this would have changed his course of action.
I think you might be right. But don't you think a case-by-case basis is still necessary for this kind of analysis? Because I think about Saudi Arabia, which
I was thinking about that too.
Right, extremely disconnected from us ideologically, extremely different from us. They are run by a monarchy.
Right.
But I think you can kind of read the geopolitical positioning and see how much Saudi Arabia needs us, not just economically, but also security-wise.
It shouldn't, the rule that I'm proposing can't be as dogmatic as how I said it, right? There needs to be some level of actual threat that can be proposed by the country.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so like Saudi Arabia, you can measure, okay, it doesn't really pose much of a threat to the U.S.
Sure.
So some level of economic integration is acceptable and probably encouraged to keep them in a tight leash. Whereas Russia, okay, no, there actually are a lot of security threats. You know, same thing with China, ton of security
actively
threats.
Trying to undermine our democracy, trying to expand geographically.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.